Imagine you're a computer tyrant with the whole of the planet Calloo in your electronic clutches. There are half a dozen assorted weirdos in Detainment Center 17 who just might pose a serious threat to your eons old rule. Without peeking at the picture below, do you A. ask them nicely to leave you alone or you'll tell their mothers on them, B. ignore them and hope they'll go away, or C. blow up the building and everyone in it? If you answered C, you would be correct. What's up, guys?
What's up? Welcome back to Superhero Chat. This is
Dollar
Ben
Dives. That's right.
Dives. I'll get it right eventually.
We may even end up changing the name.
I may even get the name right at some point. So we are on Legion, L.E.G.I.O.N. 89, issue 2.
And there it is in all its beautiful glory.
Yeah.
Poor Larissa getting clawed by the
little machines.
That's right.
The mice robots.
They do look like Mousers from Ninja Turtles, which could have been in mind here because Ninja Turtles was a thing at this point. So
last week we left off with a giant crater.
A giant kaboom.
That's right, giant kaboom.
And now we're confronted with a giant crater.
There's an episode of Parks and Rec that we'll get to eventually, where the guy has this like instant park thing where he's just like, just kaboom it.
The crater does remind me of the giant hole in Parks and Rec that
That's
Andy
right,
fell
pit.
in and broke
pit.
his legs. Yeah.
So we left off with the explosion. So this whole issue is them trying to escape.
Evade capture.
Or evade capture. Well, I mean, they're trying to escape the planet.
No, they're not.
Okay, whatever.
The plan is...
It's been a while since I read it.
Yeah. So their plan is to overthrow the computer tyrants.
Is that... Well, that's what his is.
Well, okay. That's Dox's plan.
Right. We know
Everybody else is just trying to get off the planet safely.
Right.
So
that's why I said they're trying
to
get off. Dox secretly is leading them to
do what he wants.
To do what he wants.
Still, he's very good at that. One of the things about this series is as things progress and people realize that they're doing what Dox wants anyway, they hate on him even more. Because they're trying not to do what he wants, but somehow they still end up managing to do exactly what he...
I mean, he's very, very clever.
And persuasive
and,
that way.
Very manipulative. But there's some really great scenes in this one. The team is really learning about who each other are because they're a bunch of strangers. They don't really know each other.
Yeah, they just happen to meet in prison.
Right. And now you've got this guy who's crash landed them on his planet. Because I think in the last issue he was trying to convince them to stay together.
Yeah.
And then he was determined that he should get off first. And then they crash land on his planet, get thrown in prison. Now they're escaping. And then the tyrants blew up the entire base just to get them. And now they're trying to stay alive, basically. While the whole thing is just trying to kill them.
Yeah. It's essentially the planet. And so there's not really anybody to hit, per se. Like when you think of...
Because the people are enslaved.
Right. When you think of superhero comics, there's usually a bad guy to punch. So it's very interesting. They're fighting against a computer.
Yeah.
Intelligence and that sort of thing. Now there's things that the computer intelligence throws at them, like the Mousers on the cover or
security guards.
The security guards and that sort of thing. So it's really different. It has a different feel, but
and they're a bunch of strangers.
Yeah.
And so they don't know who to trust. They
can barely trust each other.
And they're constantly at each other's throats. It's really great.
And so one of the beautiful things about this, if you're into team books and wildly different characters, just grab hold and strap yourself in, because this is that kind of book that is more focused on the team dynamics than pretending to be whatever the hot comic is for the month.
Yeah. Now we've said this to each other. Well, he said this to me a lot, and I've agreed. And we'll say this a lot throughout this series. But this would be a great DC movie trilogy.
I'm saying, like, DC missed the boat. This could have easily been their Guardians of the Galaxy, and I think it would have been even bigger. Like, there's humor here, there's relationship drama, and you get your flagpole characters like Lobo, who shows up eventually. Could you just imagine them finishing this story and then having Lobo show up at the end?
Right. Well, and then like Lobo could really just spin off his own trilogy.
I'm saying.
I mean, Lobo is hilarious.
So at the end of the first movie, Lobo shows up, ready to do some damage, and I won't say why because we'll get to that.
I really want to, but it's so good. It's so good.
We'll get to that, and then so in between L.E.G.I.O.N. and L.E.G.I.O.N. 2, we get a Lobo movie, right? That sort of gives his backstory, and and then
or just his own story. Don't even have to give backstory.
Well, I mean,
just him doing something. I'd really love to see like them reboot the DC EU. I know we're getting off topic, but I'd really love to see them like have him kind of like they did in the cartoon where Superman is gone for whatever reason and Lobo shows up and he's claiming to be the new Superman. It'd be so funny. It like there's a in the cartoon Justice League. There's an episode where that happens and it is the best. It was my first introduction to the character and it is so good.
And doesn't it seem fitting with what you've read?
Yeah. But Lobo's not in this issue, so we'll move on.
That's true.
We'll get to Lobo and we'll talk about his
and he will take.
Because I think this is the series that really made him super popular.
It is. It's the one that put him on the map.
It's really well written.
And then the guys who wrote this one wrote his miniseries.
But are there things in this that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, no.
There's some great moments.
Yeah, so, like, look at the art on this page right here.
I'll get it close.
Yeah. That's just beautiful. The detail there. The characters look on model, and
if you're listening, it's this giant like circular room.
It's like the heart of the computerized
and it's
program.
Extremely detailed.
Yeah,
extremely detailed. And when I looked at it just a minute ago, I was telling Lois because I've read this already, so I've seen it before, but I was like, modern comics aren't drawn this intricate.
Not anymore.
It's so detailed, and it's just really good.
I mean, today it's really hard well for you to get a background.
Even
in some panels.
Even the next page, which is where I want to talk about, because it's got the Durlan. He turns into this like moth creature thing that's flying, and it's just silly. He's like, oh, maybe this won't be so bad after all, and then a bunch of lasers pop out, or people start shooting him with laser guns, and he's like, ah! It's so funny. just little humor. It's not even like
it's not
crazy. It's just humor. It's funny.
Yeah, it's just natural, sort of everyday occurrences for these aliens to just run into.
Any other things you want to talk about? But meanwhile, like all the characters are bickering and yelling at each other because they don't trust docs, and for obvious reasons, and they don't trust each other. They're trying to figure out who's telling the right thing. They're trying to figure out what to do.
So at the end of the issue, they think that they have solved the problem, but they have this excellent picture that's very Kirby-esque.
I'll show it. It's basically all of them standing behind Vril Dox, who's got a burnt hand because he...
it happened in the course of solving... He says, come on, we'd better head for the surface. I want to see exactly what I've done to my planet, what I've done to my people.
Yeah. In the previous page, you see him like destroying some computer wires and programs.
And so he injures his hand in doing so.
Right. And we don't know what he's done. I mean, we do, but that's in issue 3.
And there's a beautiful splash page that I like almost as much as the one where they come out to the computer piece that I was showing you before.
Right.
Just the detail work on it is a thing of beauty. And Kitson, the artist, Barry Kitson, he's still coming into his own, right? Like, this is very early in his career, and he is going to define the look of these people and these characters for years with the way that he ultimately draws. And he's a megastar creator. He's done quite a bit of work. He drew Superman for a while. He did a lot with both this Legion and the Legion of Superheroes, with the 3-boot.
Now, one thing we didn't talk about is every couple pages. We mentioned it last week a little bit, but every couple pages we see like what the computer tyrants are doing from their perspective.
Right.
So we're following along the story. Honestly, that was like the hardest part for me, was reading the dialogue from the computer tyrants.
Yeah, because he doesn't like to read the the little thought boxes, dialogue boxes.
But I mean, this is it was easier for me than like modern comics with their obsessive narration. But some of the earlier ones drag on a lot. Like the intro that he read, which is really good. It's really fun. That's why I wanted him to read it at the beginning. But this, I mean, it's just a simple issue. All it is them trying to get off the planet while Vril Dox has his own plans. And they bicker with each other because they're just getting to know who each other is. And,
right.
Playing the blame game, and he's leading them directly where he wants them to go.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to happen until the next issue.
And
what did he do to his people?
If you think these people have just saved the day and the next issue is them celebrating, you're wrong. So learn to be pleasantly subverted as you read these issues, because they're not ever gonna quite go just the way you think they are.
They're not. They're very. It's definitely not a traditional superhero story,
and it works series. For that.
And I'll say one of the only weaknesses with the first few issues is that it's hard to get like a full grasp of the characters because so much is going on. They're constantly running.
Right, they're on the run
in the first few issues, but once they settle down, they really get into the main kind of plot of the series.
So yeah, speaking of the movie,
once it gets there, like you really start to see who the characters are.
Right.
I feel like you get more of Dox than the others at first.
Right.
But then like the others
he's the most...
really start getting fleshed out.
Yeah.
And that's when like I started falling in love with these other characters. I was like, wow, these are really well written.
Because if you don't fall in love with the other characters, you're really not going to want to stick around.
Right.
I mean, Dox alone isn't going to be...
Dox isn't going to get you interested.
Not alone. But it's really the interplay between the characters. But, I mean, we were talking about the potentiality of a movie.
Right.
And so, obviously, if they want to run with this as the first opening story or whatever, I think they can do that. Right. They would just have to give you character moments along the way to really, kind of show you who these characters are.
Because and you kind of get that in Guardians 1, where you don't really know who all these characters are until they're forced to work together.
Right.
And once they start bouncing off each other, you start to learn their personalities, you start to learn a little more about them. And by the end of the movie, you just love all the characters because they're really great. And that's similar to how the first few issues of this goes. You're kind of getting to know who they are, and by like issue 4 or 5, you've kind of got a clear definition of who and what they are, what they do. And definitely by issue 10, like, you've got your favorite characters out of it.
Right. The only sad thing about them, if DC did decide to utilize this as one of their movies, is everybody would peg it as a copycat of the Guardians, when in reality they did it first and did not actually deviate from any of the characters. Yeah. Right. I mean, obviously they're new characters, so they're blank slates. But for the Guardians stuff, they really had to adapt things.
And I think this would work better than Suicide Squad because they're actually all heroes. Whereas, like,
they're not dedicated villains anymore.
Right. Suicide Squads are dedicated villains, which I think it's can be an interesting story in itself. But there's something about having, like, heroes being the heroes of the movie that makes it easier to carry through and cheer for them.
Side note, folks, at some point we're probably going to do a series on the Suicide Squad from the 80s because I have not introduced him to that, and it is excellent. And there are heroes in there. Flag, the guy who leads the Suicide Squad, he's a hero. And then Bronze Tiger, Vixen, those are characters that are also mixed in with the supervillains to sort of keep them straight. And so at some point, look for that. But it'll probably be years from now because that series has not been collected, and it's hard to find back issues of that. But it is really good reading. Plus, with the movies, the first few issues and certain key issues have shot up through the roof, making it difficult for it to be a dollar bin dive.
So, thanks for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments.
This is episode
2 and issue 2. Legion 89. Go check it out. It's great. Great series. I've read most of it now. He's definitely read it all. And we highly recommend it. And in an age where comic books are hard to find, these old books are excellent. They're worth it, and they're super cheap.
Yes.
Super cheap. So
I mean, he got the next one from me for free, and I only paid 20 cents for it.
So let us know what you think, and leave us a comment. Go ahead and like the video if you enjoyed that. Subscribe if you haven't.
Because we're definitely going to be making more.
If you're listening on iTunes or whatever, thanks for tuning in.
We have a Facebook page, Superhero Chat.
That's right.
Find us there. That way we can communicate.
We don't necessarily post a ton on there. We
I don't
might
really
change
know how
that
we'll
later,
do
but we do respond if you comment.
Right.
But anyways, appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace.